John, how worried are you about the economy and the risk of a potential recession, and not just in Australia, by the way, but globally in the second half of this year? I mean, that data yesterday that our economy grew by just 0.2%, is really concerning.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to have a sharp slowdown that we all feel in the second half of this year and probably heading into next year. I mean, in a sort of brutal reality kind of way, we do need the economy to slow down quite a bit to bring inflation down. Unfortunately, that's going to mean unemployment ticking up a bit. Hopefully, Philip Lowe says he can tread this narrow path to get the proverbial soft landing, but I've got to say, that's looking less and less likely now, the higher rates and inflation go. So we are at risk of having a harder landing. I still think it's possible we could have a soft one, but not as possible as it was maybe looked at 6 months ago.
And what about this question? I mean, he talks about the narrow path and Jim Chalmers talks about not crunching the economy. But Matt, do you think we are looking at a situation where inflation could become entrenched at around the 5 to 6%, if it even gets to 5 to 6%?
Well, that is a concern, Sharri, and it's more of a concern because Jim Chalmers seems to be playing the role of a backseat driver here, not actually at the wheel. He is the treasurer, but every time I see him get up and speak, it's like he's simply like a weatherman, just giving a report on what economic conditions are like, and he always sort of has this bedside manner that everyone's doing it so tough and it's so terrible, but you're the guy in charge. So what are you doing to fix this issue? And they seemingly not caring or not doing anything to help restrain these wage price growth demands, which are understandable, but are potentially going to lead to this spiral where we do get inflation at a very high level for a long time, and that'll be bad for everybody.
Yeah. John, Bronwyn Bishop was on Sky News's The Front Page last night with Jenna Clark, and she said we haven't seen these sort of conditions in 30 years. I'm not sure if we have that comment. If we do, have a look at it.
I don't think we have seen for 30 years a more devastating time that we're starting to enter.
John, what do you think of that?
Well, I guess there is a risk we do head back to that sort of late 1980s situation where we have high inflation, high interest rates and high unemployment and a recession. But I mean, I would point out also right at the moment, unemployment's really low. It's only about 3.5%. There are some good things happening in the economy too, so we shouldn't be all in gloom, doom and gloom. But there is definitely a risk of the trajectory of where we're heading.
Yeah, and that is the big difference, that we still at the moment have low unemployment. So if we can keep it there, Matt Canavan, I mean, I know the forecast is for it to increase, but we're not looking at the sort of levels we saw in the 80s or 90s.
Well, I'd go further back. I think it's more like the 1970s when at that time we had low unemployment, but we had a situation where energy prices were surging at the result then of the OPEC oil cartel being formed. We had a big spending government in the new Whitlam government that were completely blind to the pressures they were creating in the economy. And then we did kind of lose a decade in this country with high inflation, increasing unemployment, and generally going backwards in our competitiveness until the economic reforms of the 1980s. So that's what I think the risk is right here now, that we are kind of in this stage maybe we're getting complacent, that things have been too good for too long, that we think it will just last forever. And that's where I worry that the government's at the moment. They're not taking seriously the risks here of high energy prices, high inflation, high wage demands, and a government and a treasurer that doesn't seem to be able to resist the demands of his high-spending ministers.
All right, National Senator Matt Canavan and Finance Editor, Economics Editor at the Australian Financial Review, John Kehoe, thank you both very much for your insights tonight.